Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. This is uh, absolutely something that's astounding to see. It's incredible to see, but it's not surprising.
Well, I think you don't have time to mourn, or you just have to be prepared to work.
That's a Republican state's representative and a Democratic state representative in the aftermath of Trump being the president-elect following Tuesday's election. What's going to happen at the Illinois State House? Good question. So I reached out to a Republican in the superminority and a Democrat in the supermajority to get a take of what they see happening here. Welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up each and every weekday morning here on America's Talking Network, giving you things you need to know as a taxpayer in the state of Illinois. So clearly, Trump's election sparking a wave of ideas of what a Trump administration is going to look like. But obviously, one of the chief things that he has promised is mass deportation of violent illegal immigrants. And with a mandate like getting the popular vote, sweeping all the swing states, most likely, getting the Electoral College overwhelmingly. You've also got the control of the U.S. Senate going to Republicans and expected control of the U.S. House going to Republicans. So a clear mandate here. And Trump, again, having that promise of mass deportations. I asked both state representatives about that as well. But first, let's hear from State Representative Adam Niemerg, a Republican. He shared some of his thoughts on what it means for a Trump presidency for the country.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. This is absolutely something that's astounding to see. It's incredible to see, but it's not surprising. People are really tired of the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration. They're tired of the wokeness that we have going through the entire society. They're tired of going to the grocery store, paying an exorbitant amount just to have groceries, to put gas in their car. Inflation's out of control, and you see Donald Trump come in and win the popular vote the first time since 1988. You see the swing states swing his way. You see the House and the Senate. You see everything that has happened, and it is absolutely incredible. And it's time for Republicans across the board to embrace Trump and to put these never-Trumpers behind us.
So Niemerg obviously has his perspective as a Republican. What about a Democrat take? State Representative Shawn Ford out of Chicago asked him his thoughts about Trump winning.
Well, I think you don't have time to mourn, or you just have to be prepared to work. And as a state legislator, I think that it immediately puts me in the mind of being prepared to lose federal funds for vital services like the Affordable Care Act, funds that we may be dependent on for our energy bills, funds that we may be dependent on for education. So, I mean, right away, it puts my mind in the mode of trying to figure out how we're going to deal with a different administration, one being a Democrat that was supportive of healthcare, and one being a administration that says that they want to possibly roll back healthcare for the poor.
Clearly, you have Representative Ford looking at the finances of the state, what it means for a possible stoppage of federal tax dollars for noncompliance. We'll hear a little bit more of that when it comes to the idea of enforcing immigration law, because, again, something else that Trump has said is he's going to try to end sanctuary states and cities. Well, Illinois being just one of those. What about state house control? That was another question. Obviously, it's interesting to note. It seems like it's going to be the status quo when it comes to the makeup of the state legislature. Here's Representative Ford sharing his thoughts on Democrats maintaining supermajorities.
Yeah, I think that it appears we're going to still have a supermajority, which is excellent. I'm excited about that. I do believe that, given the outcome of the federal presidential election, and the outcome of the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and possibly the outcome of the House. That's a trifecta for the federal government. You got the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. I think Illinois must look at an agenda possibly for veto session and for our lame duck to evaluate any kind of impact that the Trump administration could have on Illinois if we don't take action now. And so, yeah, I think we still have a strong state as far as being able to get things done in the General Assembly. So we can't miss the opportunity to make sure that we protect some of our human rights in our state statutes and protect education programs in our in the state. So I think it's critical that we do everything that we can to look and evaluate the impact that a Trump administration could have on state government.
So clearly, Ford being in the Democratic supermajority, what's that mean for Republicans in the superminority? And where does State Representative Adam Niemerg, as a Republican, feel Republicans failed in the state of Illinois to really gain any traction in the General Assembly?
Yeah, so in the state house, now I've looked at the numbers, and Trump has done very well in the state of Illinois. Obviously, didn't carry the state, but he's done the best since any Republican in 1988. And I was just looking at some numbers here this morning. CBS News, as of this morning, Harris was leading Trump 51-47. Now, this is interesting because in 2020, the numbers were Biden 57, Trump 40. In 16, it was Clinton 55, Trump 38. So it's very interesting to see the inroads that Donald Trump has made in the state of Illinois. And I think that goes directly to his message. He is not afraid to tackle the issues. He's not afraid to talk about the social issues, illegal immigration, the woke indoctrination going on in schools, kitchen table issues. You know, like I said, going to the grocery store, paying an unbelievable amount just for groceries. But when you look at the Illinois House, it's looking like we're going to be sitting at the status quo, 40 members, with the Democrats still controlling the supermajority with 78. And I think it's a clear indication to the folks in my party in the House that have a deep disdain for Donald Trump. It's a clear indication that the movement means something, that Trump has moved the needle, and this Never Trump movement is a serious issue we have here in the state of Illinois, and people need to leave that behind and understand that the way to win the election, the way to move the needle in the state of Illinois, to pick up seats in the House, is not by playing defense against the Democrats. It's about going on the offensive. It's about having conversations with folks on these social issues. It's about embracing what Donald Trump has done to the party, not running away from it. I believe that when we do that, when we stand up as conservatives, because Trump gave a clear message about what he stands for versus what Kamala Harris stands for. And unfortunately, sometimes in the Illinois House, we don't see that. So we're sitting at 40, and in my opinion, with the way everything went last night, we should have picked up seats, and that was a failure.
So clearly the Republicans reflecting a bit on how to exactly get the message across to voters in Illinois. But one of the big issues heading into a Trump administration, again, the immigration issue. I've asked even Governor Pritzker about how's Illinois going to play in the mass deportation if Trump wins. Well, Pritzker didn't think Trump was going to win, but Trump has won, and it's likely he's going to aim to try to do away with sanctuary cities and to immediately begin deportation operations. State Representative Shawn Ford says he's heard from constituents. Constituents are angry about non-citizen migrants taking taxpayer resources, and he definitely heard that during this election.
Well, I think that I'm looking forward to looking at the vote totals. Of course, through the process, the voices of the taxpayers were not happy with tax dollars being spent on migrants. And they threatened to um, let their voices be heard on election day. And so we shall see. I think that what's going to be very important that we do as Democrats is protect the taxpayers and our um, voting population. And so I think that it's going to take, and we should be prepared to have some type of um, plan with the federal government. And we have to keep in mind that if we protect migrants in this state and stand in the way of deportation, that that comes, of course, without federal support. You know, there was a Democrat that was there's a Democrat right now that's actually serving, and Democrats have been fighting for um, funds to support the migrants, and that's been difficult uh, to receive. So, if we already know that our budgets are tight, and we know that our healthcare systems are hurting as it relates to access for citizens and funding for programs, then we have to do the right thing and protect the citizens here in Illinois. And so we shall see. I mean, I'm not going to automatically call for the immediate raids of communities, but I am going to ask for a smart approach and some type of strategy that we could have with the federal government.
So Ford, again, kind of highlighting there about this idea of, wrong video, this idea of federal dollars possibly not being freed up for Illinois if Illinois is not going to comply with federal immigration laws. And something that Trump said is he's going to try to do away with sanctuary city policies. And that might be by having the power of the purse put pressure on states like Illinois, for instance.
Well, I think I hope I think we should participate in getting rid of any violent individuals from the state and send them back to their homeland. That is comforting. And I think that's why it's very important that we work with the administration when it becomes in power so that we could strategically move those people back to their homelands. Because one, there are some people that have made their way here and they are already been productive. They have families, they've had children already in this country, and they're productive. So the fact is we need to get rid of the tax burdens and the criminals that's making our lives less safe, and finding comfort in criminal activity right here in Illinois. They must go.
So again, clearly Ford saying that he thinks that he agrees with Trump. Violent, non-citizen, illegal immigrants need to be booted out of the country. So is that going to actually play out with Democrats, though? This idea of cooperation or consequence?
I am. Those are some things that we have to be concerned about. That the federal government controls a lot of Medicare, Medicaid money, especially Medicaid, and we don't want to lose the funding for Medicaid from the feds, and that's a possibility. So, I mean, the Trump administration and the Trumps, he could get his way in many ways, and it's always through federal funds, where he could tie federal funds to cooperation.
And Trump actually did this, if you recall, during his first administration. He attempted to withhold a certain type of law enforcement grant that goes out to law enforcement agencies across the country, but he was trying to withhold those grant dollars from communities that have sanctuary city policies. including Chicago. That's led to State Representative Adam Niemerg, a Republican, saying that he doesn't really anticipate Democrats at the State House cooperating at all, and he believes that this is going to have to be dealt by the courts.
We'll have to go through the court system for that, obviously. It's a situation where, Illinois is a sanctuary state. Chicago is a sanctuary city. All ICE facilities were closed just a few years ago in the state of Illinois. So I think it's going to be fought in the court system. I'll play as much of a part in helping the president through that process as I possibly can in the legislature. But I think it's going to be through the court system. You're going to see in veto session, you're going to see a lot of meltdowns since Donald Trump is now going to be the 47th president of the United States. You're going to see the Democrats really give a lot of floor speeches. They're going to file a lot of legislation on the immigration issue. But to be honest, the people, I went over the numbers just a moment ago. That issue, even in Chicago, people are fed up with it. I mean, Kamala Harris did a 180 on that issue. So the Democrats know it's a loser. It has lost. It has lost them the election, along with a multitude of other issues. But to answer your question definitively, that's something that's probably going to have to be sorted out in the courts. But obviously, the open border policies are going to come to an end, and America is going to prosper.
So Adam Niemerg saying he expects the courts to have to get involved with what's going on with the immigration issue. We're expected to hear from Governor J.B. Pritzker later on this morning. He's going to hold an open-ended news conference. I'm sure it'll be jam full of all kinds of news, so we'll bring that to you tomorrow. But a preview maybe. Here is some of what Governor Pritzker had to say on a news statement he released yesterday. He says, "Today I stand with the millions of Americans who voted for our democratic values in this election. It's clear now that nationally a majority of those who came to the polls chose a different path, and President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance won the election. I want to thank Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, their team, and hundreds of thousands of volunteers." Goes on to say, "This morning, our most vulnerable communities woke up to new uncertainty about their future, scared that their rights will no longer be protected, and unsure whether this nation still stands with them. To whom those whose health care is under even greater threat, to our Black, Brown, and AAPI communities, our LGBTQ friends, and their families. Immigrants and first-generation Americans, our most valuable Americans, and those with disabilities, to all who have been made to feel unsafe and unwelcome by the Trump campaign and its allies, know that Illinois is your ally. You will always be welcome here." So clearly, that'll give you a bit of a preview of what to expect from Governor J.B. Pritzker whenever he addresses the media up in Chicago this morning. We'll bring it all to you here with Illinois in Focus Daily, each and every weekday morning, live with America's Talking Network. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, and the headlines at thecentersquare.com.